Welcome to another Tech Talk Tuesdays. Thank you for joining us this evening. As we lead up to BizTech Conference 2022, we want to discuss the topic digital transformation. Now more than ever, organizations are thinking about digital transformation. What has Caribbean business community how has Caribbean business community embraced cloud transformation? What new and emerging trends should we be looking out for? And how can digital transformation support our wider tech community? Let's discuss with the expert panel to chime in on this ever so important topic on every business leader's minds today. Joining us this evening are Blair Lilford from Salt Technology, Mr. Joe Addison, CIO at Salt, Mr. Dara Fitzgerald Selby, General Manager of Digicel Business, and Mr. Douglas Thomas Manila, Director at Hypersync, and Mr. Mike Branco, a technology innovator and startup entrepreneur over there in Bermuda. Welcome to the panel, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. My first question will be directed. I'm just going to throw this question out there. What is digital transformation?
Well, I can start, and then I'll happy to pass the mic along to my fellow colleagues.
Sure.
Digital transformation, of course, means different things to different people, but essentially it's really about reinventing the way you deliver value to your customers, partners, suppliers, and staff and colleagues. It's reimagining the way you do business from an operations perspective. It's reimagining how you deliver products and services to your customers, and it's using modern technologies to enable a new way of doing business.
Right. Perfect. Anybody want to add to that?
I think just to echo what Joe said, I think for each company, it is a different journey. So if you're, traditional company that has customer care, accounting, back office, then you may have a lot in common in your digital transformation journey that you can copy from those from your cohort. But then if you're something unique, let's say like a waterworks company, then digital transformation isn't going to change how you deliver water, but you're going to use something like IoT to measure and bill that utility back to the customer. So it is a discovery process for each company to look at each component of their business and say, how can I transform that digitally? Obviously, things like finding a stack of paper and turning that into a digital workflow
Right.
are pretty easy, low-hanging fruit. But then there are other aspects that depend on the business.
Okay.
Using your example, Mike, about water distribution, a good example is companies like water distribution that may have an operational model where they roll trucks based on a schedule, to refill customer supply. Now they can use IoT technology to actually see how fast a customer is. When they get to plus or minus 20% remaining, then they roll the truck. So they can optimize their operations using technology and drive down the costs of delivering that service to their customer.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Great. Dara, you added, are you speaking?
I can't believe I'm the first to do that one.
It's okay.
And I was about to say I'm not the technology guy. So I'm on the panel of guys here who I know very well. Very technical. I'm a commercial person, so I'm the general manager at Digicel Business. So in my career, I meet customers and look to solve problems. And it's funny that so often digital transformation as a topic comes up, and from a techie perspective, it's a very interesting discussion, a very interesting conversation. But very often we can go and talk to business owners, and they can be intimidated by the word digital transformation, that they believe they need. They believe they need to have their own division, or that it's not for them, it's for a large organization. But digital transformation is just simply using technology to improve how you do things, and in the easiest sense. And you can hear from the examples the gentleman gave there, it's just about improving how we get things done for a customer, how we engage with the customer, or how we engage with each other within a business to deliver for a customer.
Right. I'm glad that you simplify that as well, because a lot of like small businesses, medium-sized businesses, some even large enterprise businesses think that when you hear the word digital transformation, it's a scary word. I'm not ready for this. I'm too small. I can't do this. When it's really just digitizing your processes and procedures.
Or it's
Anything that
going to cost me more money when
it's
it'll
going to
actually
cost you
cost
more
you less
money.
money.
Exactly, when you digitally transform. So it leads to my next question. How can an organization prepare to digitally transform their business? And what are some of the things that they need to consider in order to do transformation well? Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, I
I'm happy.
can start with that
Sure.
one. That's okay.
Mhm.
My expertise specifically is cybersecurity.
Mhm.
Working with organizations all over the world as they're progressing towards digital transformation does not come up without its many pitfalls, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes, when we see organizations progress down the path of digital transformation, once they get to the end goal, so to speak, whether we have firewalls or endpoints in place, oftentimes they get to the battlefield, so to speak, with a sword and a shield, and the bad guys are already using nuclear weapons. So it's important as we progress, as we're building out specific policies, that we
Mhm.
put elements of redundancy from a management standpoint around their infrastructure, their cloud infrastructure, the users within their environment, to really make an emphasis on cybersecurity as we're retrofitting their environment to meet the needs as they progress and go down towards the path of digital transformation.
Okay, awesome. Anybody wants to add to that? Guys, what does an organization need to do to prepare to transform their business digitally?
Well, one of my favorite books is a book, Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of the 7 habits is start with the end in mind. So I think that that's a very good thing to look at. So what are we trying to achieve? So
Mhm.
again, rather than looking at, I often find actually working working for a telecoms company,
Mhm.
they look at people can often the mistake that could be made, for example, is let's look at the devices. We need tablets.
Mhm.
We need devices. We need to spend money on devices. That's not the way to look at it.
Right.
The device is an enabler. At the back end is the enabler. So it's just, again, go back to the simplification. What are you ultimately trying to achieve? Keep it simple. Look at the end goal and work your way backwards.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the directors that I know before used to say, "Keep it Fisher Price." Fisher Price doesn't have to be complex. Keep
Love
it
it.
simple.
Hmm.
All
Yeah,
right.
and I think to build
Okay,
on what
Mike.
Dara said as well is I would ask customers, like, tell me your biggest pain points. And one customer many moons ago said, we get packages in, as we all know, in the islands, that you can't buy Amazon direct, so you have to freight forward it into the island and then distribute it
Mhm.
locally. And they would call 700 customers a day manually to say, hey, good news, your package is here. And we
Mhm.
looked at that and we said, well, that's painful. And you're not going to be able to scale, because you're not going to be
Right.
able to go beyond maybe 1,000 phone calls a day. And
Mhm.
so what we did is we automated that, and we took the 2 people who were making those phone calls and redistributed them to higher value tasks. And and we found that problem by asking, what's your biggest pain point right now, and you just go through from most painful to least and start solving one by one.
Great. Thanks. That's great advice. Anything else to add from anyone?
I would add there's a lot of guidance on this topic from various sources.
Mm-hmm.
The one that we use most often is based on an adoption framework published by Microsoft, but it's not Microsoft specific. And it starts off with defining your business motivations, your outcomes, your business outcomes that you're seeking to achieve from your transformation journey.
Right.
Really start at that level first, as Dara said, and then work into the increasing levels of detail. So, what's your organizational readiness to change? How are you going to measure success? What are the KPIs that you're going to use to measure success when you get through this journey? What's your digital landscape and your digital debt in the organization? Where's your investments? What are the things that are approaching end of life? This is very much a technology-centric approach, but there is a lot of guidance available to guide customers through this
This journey.
roadmap and this journey.
That's awesome. I like that. So I did take a note of the adoption framework from Microsoft. So it's really about planning and strategy. So strategize, to figure out what is it that I want to transform, or maybe the overall goal of the organization. What is it that you want to achieve, and to start putting the planning in place to achieve that, and what's the end goal, and how. Last but not least, as you said, how will you measure success? How do you measure that? Right. All right. So it brings to my next questions. I mean, someone touched on it earlier, but what are some of the areas? I mean, I don't remember who had said it, but with regards to anything can be digitally transformed is really moving. So just for the persons who are maybe for the medium businesses, or some persons who are not sure where to start, what are some of the areas do you believe in a business that persons can look at to start transforming digitally from your experience? You want to take that?
I think, yeah, I can kick it off. I think I look for the common things that exist in any business, right? For a bank, a telco, an IT company, a waterworks company, you have customer care. So, where can you, start to do digital transformation and customer care? If customers are all calling in, can you put chatbots in? Can you have top 5 answers pre-canned, in those chatbots, and start to streamline? And then, every business has an accounting function. And one example I always use from one of the companies we own, it's a online ticketing company. They do the bank reconciliations until about 2 months ago manually, and they download it from the bank and then type it into QuickBooks, and we automated that. And so I think any business has these common customer care, accounting, so those are ones that you can tackle straight away.
Okay, welcome, Blair.
Hi, everyone. I'm clearly the only one that is truly Caribbean, showing up 15 minutes late. No, sorry. I apologize. I ran into a number of different technology kind of issues trying to get in.
All right, no worries. We have kicked off, so feel free to add to the questions or answers as we go along. Mike was just touching on what areas of a business that we can digitally transform, to give examples of that. I don't know if you want to add to it.
I'll leave it to the next question and get settled into the group. If I may, good evening, everyone. Good to see all of you gentlemen and you young lady on the call. Again, apologies. Hope everyone's doing well. Again, sorry.
Hi, Blair. So I have one. So again, as one of the for me, one of the lifebloods of a business is sales. Okay, so you need to grow your revenue, and the amount of people that I speak to in organizations, and they're trying to figure out, like, say, you're trying to figure out what's your forecast for the next 3 months or the next 6 months, and we all work with each other and in our day-to-day environment, and there's other companies I go to and they find it difficult to forecast. Whereas in our business, we're pretty good at forecasting 6 months out. And I remember back in the day before we had Salesforce, which for me is a perfect digital transformation. Before we had Salesforce and we were using Excel, how hard it was to figure out what we had to do. And every time an executive came to me to say, Dara, we need to get a forecast for your team, I'd have to stop my team and quiz them, write the numbers into Excel, and then do a pivot and do all these, whatever I'm doing. And then it could take me half a day to get a forecast, and it's a static forecast. But if we go now, I'll just go online, click a button. My team have done the work. They're putting in their information. We're following a process. We all speak a common language of what it is we need to. So if an opportunity is sitting at a certain stage, this is where it is. And like for me, that's the perfect example of digital transformation. We're loading data onto a platform, and that data, then I interrogate that data, and it's telling me at any given point in time what's happening now and how and what things are going to look like in the future, where it used to take me literally half a day and wasting loads of people's time. If anybody needs to know information now, press a button and it's done.
Right.
So
And one of the
again,
things,
very simple way of looking at it.
yeah, and but one of the things, Dara, and when it comes to transformation or any digitizing anything with regards to ensuring that the data is clean. So there has to be a process and some form of policing to ensure that what you're putting in is what you want to get. You know, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. Plus, the other piece is, and you probably you lead to it, is why will people do it? And like for sales guys, don't like stopping and doing things. Like in the past, sales teams will do work, and like you implement a CRM or you implement a new way of doing something, and your internal staff need to implement it, but they're not going to do it unless there's something in it for them. But again, if you can talk about the benefit of, okay, guys, you all you have to do is input the data. You don't have to have a 2-hour meeting running through anything. Just input the data. We'll interrogate it and maybe validate it with you once a week. If you can show them by doing something as they go, it stops them having to come back to base, or it stops them having to have a 2-hour meeting. It stops them having to run the report themselves. And so like you have to show the value to the end user to make the whole thing work.
Great. I like that. Anything else to add from
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we had an event in March of 2020 that kind of changed the world, and a lot of organizations had to adjust fairly quickly to a new style of working.
Right.
So that's a digital transformation story I think we can all relate to. Prior to March 2020, a lot of us marched into the office every morning and had our donuts and coffee and our water cooler chats, and all of a sudden we were forced into a digital world using collaboration tools like this to collaborate and share documents and processes and workflows electronically. And that was one of those business disruptive events that sort of forced people to change quickly the way they were working. But it's a good example of a digital transformation story. It might have been unplanned, but it's absolutely one that everyone can relate to.
Right. And I think it has forced a lot of persons, a lot of businesses, small, medium, large, to kind of force them in the direction to digitally transform how they serve their customers, how they buy things. Everybody's now exposed to technology. So I think COVID has literally sped up that process to get persons, businesses, schools, everybody online because of what happened during the pandemic.
If I may, but even what we're doing right now, right?
Yes.
Prior to COVID, this try and get 6 people on a call and communicate. It just didn't happen. I mean, most people would be like, "Oh, that's technology. I don't, it's too complicated. I don't want to do it."
Right.
It was amazing how quickly all those people that didn't want to adopt technology before very rapidly were like, how can we continue to operate in business, right? But it's typically, as with almost any industry, right? There's a disruption. There's something that happens that makes people all of a sudden adopt change, right? And sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But definitely, like I said, this having a conference or a call where we have an audience tuning in and us being able to have this, if we said that this was a regular occurrence 3 years ago, we would all just chuckled and said, yeah, we would love it to be, but realistically, that's not the case. Now the concern is I'm sitting here in my office, I have all these windows behind me, and I'm looking at Doug and Doug's going, Blair, cybersecurity, don't leave into your emails, your documents up on your window, on your screen, because people will be able to read that when they're videoing it. I got you, buddy, don't worry, I saw that. I was like, minimize it all, right? So we have other challenges we need to deal with as we adopt technology, right?
Right. Yes. And the world has embraced that change. And it's just for us, some persons are still trying to figure out how to get there. And this is why we're having this talk, just to have the discussion with you, the experts, to kind of guide our audience, our businesses who are looking to get this, and maybe persons who are coming to BizTech next week, to have a further discussion with your team about how to digitally transform. So I think someone touched on it. I think it was Mike touched on O2 earlier. So based on your experience, I mean, everybody here on this call, with the exception of me, would have experience in working in a developed country. How has businesses in the developed countries approached digital transformation, and what are some of the success stories, if you can share?
I think just to build on something that Blair just said, that you have these events that force you into digital transformation. And I think it was the CEO of Microsoft said that during the pandemic,
Mhm.
there was 2 years of digital transformation that happened in 6 months. And so, even though I'm sitting here in Bermuda, um, one of the companies that we own, a marketing company, was still using a server in the office. And all of a sudden, it became a sink or swim situation where everybody had to go home, and we had to digitally transform them very quickly so they could continue to work, earn revenue, or they would be out of business.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's a success story because we should have transformed them before. But I think as we all come out the backside of the pandemic, it's necessary. If you're a restaurant, you must have delivery service now. And we all know that it was an option before. So I think, I guess just to answer your question around the developed nations, some of them were doing that. I think now everybody is catching up a lot faster because that one event forced us all to do digital transformation to, in some cases, survive as a business.
Right.
Yeah, I think you'd get little sectors before, right? So you would go like, it'd be in Soho, and there'd be little sectors in New York or in California, or like, you know what I mean? They're little more tech savvy people that were like forward thinking, going, this is great technology, we're using this now. And very quickly it got adopted right across the board, right?
Right.
I think the other side of all of this is, as we build out these systems, as Michael mentioned, that 2 years of adoption and digital transformation in a matter of months. One of the areas, and I know Doug will be able to talk to this, is around the security aspect of as everyone adopted all of this. One of the things that kind of got left behind, and we're seeing that with the amount of breaches that are happening at the moment with data getting surfaced, was that people were adopting technology that didn't actually have a full understanding, or the team that could support them on a from a cybersecurity or security standpoint, right? And I think it's something that it needs to be a topic of conversation, right? It needs to be something that's brought forward and asked and discussed, because just turning and saying, well, now in Microsoft Cloud or Google Cloud, wherever it might be, or the Salt Cloud, does not mean that someone is looking after that for you, right? There's a misconception, and maybe I'll hand it over to the others to kind of give some input on that.
No, yeah.
Right. Yes. Good. Go ahead.
Blair is spot on. We have a saying on our side of the house, right? Yesterday's luxuries are tomorrow's necessities, right? Everybody was rushing towards digital transformation. One of the big things that we actually saw on the onset of COVID was a massive increase in ransomware attacks, specifically in and around the Caribbean region for organizations that we provide fully SOC managed services for. A lot of it was, we look at the infrastructure, right? And everybody's rushing towards, we have to have people work remotely now, right? First thing that we saw was endpoint protection was number one. Okay, well, let's get endpoints deployed. But really what we're doing is we have to factor in everything. What Blair was saying, right? How do we visualize this? We have to base the factors on the infrastructure we're using to gain access to this data, number one. Number two, the actual users and the user behavior that goes along with what their tendencies are and what devices they're using. There is a culmination of an everlasting vulnerability within every single unique organization. Why? Because nobody's a Microsoft shop end-to-end fully, and not every single company is, or IBM. The hodgepodge mixture of different technologies, softwares, as well as users and training users, and factor in the variable of on-prem to hybrid to cloud, and last CEO or CTO wants to do this, new one wants to do that. Every one of these nuances creates vulnerabilities and risks. So as we're progressing into the digital transformations, we're progressing to going fully cloud, what does that mean to our environment, and how do we protect our crown jewels? And most importantly, how do we have visibility and enforcement to protect ourselves as we progress? So,
right, and that's very, very some salient points that both of you touched on. So while we prepare to digitally transform, now we're going online. What are some of the vulnerabilities online? that we ought to look after. So I guess in the planning stage, one of you had mentioned the planning with regards to Microsoft, the strategy and stuff. So a part of that should look at cybersecurity. So if I'm going online, I'm bringing my businesses online, we're purchasing food online, our customers are using their credit cards, we're now paying, everything is now there. So with regards to safeguard yourself or your business, you need to also think about in your planning process, how do I secure it? Right. So I'm glad that you touched on that as a part of digital transformation, security.
And the security model, and Doug's the expert here, but I'll comment. The security model and shared responsibility model changes as your reference architecture pattern changes. So if you're hosting all of your infrastructure in-house behind your corporate firewall, you have full responsibility for that environment, all infrastructure. Your security responsibility is different in that model than it would be if you were subscribing to a SaaS model online, like a Salesforce.com or an Office 365 service. It's not to say that your security responsibility goes to zero in a SaaS model, but it changes. And then in different cloud architectures like IaaS and PaaS, infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, again, the shared responsibility model moves, it changes. So just understand that security is a shared responsibility, typically between the end customer or consumer, the partner, in some cases MSSP providers, and then the cloud provider, the hosting platform itself.
Right.
They all have a role to play in security. And again, that line between responsibilities changes depending on the architecture.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. This is very, very insightful. And I hope that our viewers online are still up to the end when we come to the end of our talk, but we have quite a bit more to discuss. I'll take the questions afterwards, to the panel experts. So what I want to do as well, the question with regards to, we spoke about the developed countries. What are some of the changes in market conditions and consumer behavior have you observed? I know you touched on some of it already, but if we could just elaborate on that a little bit. I mean, changes in market condition, consumer behavior. What have you observed in your field?
So, Twitty, I'm just going to say one thing quickly to kick it off in a direction, because you to ties in the last piece you said about working in other markets. I worked in Europe for most of my career. In the last 8 years, I've been working in Jamaica mainly. For me, the number one difference, I find innovation the innovation here is fantastic. This is an entrepreneurial country. I love it. Everybody has got something going on the side. There's 2 or 3 things. So I think there's going to become a tipping point where if you can forget about the barriers of the country and start thinking about the market being global. And if Jamaican entrepreneurs don't just think about selling or providing services to their neighbors, but thinking in a more global term, you could really take off. However, banking is a barrier here.
Wow.
It is, there is not enough people who have a bank account. There's not enough people who can trade digitally. So I think that's one piece. So it's I would say the big difference is between how people have embraced technology in this part of the world versus in Europe. I don't see a huge difference. We're all doing many different things. In Europe, there's a more established banking market, and the general population. Everybody can go online and bank, but not here. If that changes, I believe that the Caribbean will catch up so quickly because of the entrepreneurial mindset. So for me, the 2 questions tie in with each other. So I don't know what you think in terms of consumer-based behavior and digitalization.
I think the region traditionally has been a bit starved for modern technology offerings. A lot of the mega tech industry hasn't served the Caribbean well and on parity with some of the larger markets, but that's changing. One of the reasons why we at SALT brought Azure to the region is because we wanted to provide the same level of services, modern cloud services for customers to build modern applications and move toward this digital transformation model quickly. We wanted to provide that in region, and that was our vision behind bringing Azure to the region.
And I'm glad that you mentioned Azure as well. And I just want to, I mean, this is not, it's a part of digital transformation, but what I noticed, I mean, there's some parts of the Caribbean. I'm also in tech. I do operate a tech business also. When it comes to Azure, when you look at the other markets, they're embracing that technology. Jamaica is a little bit slower in getting on board to Azure, and I would want to see that change because I know the benefits of that. So when you look at Barbados, Trinidad, Bermuda, those other markets, Cayman, they are embracing the Azure thing. Jamaicans are a little bit different when it comes to things. We took a while to embrace the cloud. When you hear the cloud, all the cloud is, it's just a big word, but it's really that little drawing with the cloud that you go, the internet is the internet. So it's just weird how Jamaican businesses think about. So I really want you to kind of explain Azure technology briefly. I know it's not a Microsoft conversation, but because of the trend that I'm seeing and where I'm seeing other Caribbean markets, embracing the cloud, especially Azure, the Jamaican businesses are not yet. They're still thinking about it. And we get a lot of inquiries asking about the technology, what it is. So if you could just touch on that briefly, I don't know, any one of you.
Joe, if you don't mind, I'll kind of jump in on that one because I was thinking the same thing when you look at what Salt and Digicel have done in Jamaica with bringing Azure Stack into Jamaica. Speaking as a native islander from Bermuda, one of the problems we've had with our customers or our governments is they don't want their data going out to the cloud in other countries.
Right.
So when Salt bought Azure Stack to Jamaica, that solves a big problem for business and government in Jamaica because then they're comfortable that it's on island.
It's on island.
And there's data residency. And that's been a big discussion with techies and businesses over the last 10 years in the islands. So I think, to answer your earlier question about market conditions, that was a big positive change. Which then governments can say, you know what, I'm going to do my digital transformation journey as well and serve my population better because I have these services here on island. And they, were uncomfortable pushing those services out to Azure in, let's say, the US for, tax, jurisdictional, data residency purposes. So I think that's a big catalyst for Jamaica. And you see examples along the way. Like another one that I saw probably in the last 10 years was e-commerce and having a solution that works in the region. And so First Atlantic Commerce bought that solution to the region and was able to enable e-commerce for the region because US and Canadian companies just didn't know the region, didn't have a solution that worked in the region. Right. And so I think what we're seeing now are solutions that are showing up in region, and they're acting as catalysts and accelerants for businesses and government. And then as a result, consumers are expecting more, and it starts to snowball into a very positive technology story.
And if I could add to that, and very, very well put, Michael, especially when we're talking about underserved jurisdictions. So I'm originally from Zimbabwe, so I come from that side of the world. And one of the things, when Dara touched on, the e-commerce or banking, when that platform changes, when we start seeing that come through, again, we talk about disruptors, right? So when I was a kid, and my team will be giggly because I love talking about this story. When I was a kid, we had POTS lines, right? So we had these party lines where 50 people would all have it on the same phone. So depending on the ring, so if it rung twice, it was my house. If it rung 3 times, it was my neighbor's. But you could always pick up the phone, listen to your neighbor's phone calls if you want. Everyone was on one line at a party line. But there was only a few houses that had it. Really, it was the farmers or a few of the kind of nice areas of town would have it. But that was about it, right? Most people didn't have a phone. Communication was, I'm going to walk down the road and speak to my cousin or my uncle, whatever it might be. And literally within, I'd say, a 4-year period of cell phones coming out, we went from no one having phones to everyone had a phone and everyone could call each other. But it didn't just stop there. They then took the phones, and so I'm now as a young boy growing up in Africa, and everyone's got phones, cell phones, and talking jibber jabbering. And we'd go down to the market, and you'd want to buy something. You'd literally take your phone, and you'd send money to the persons. It was held by the post office at the time, but you would send money to them over your phone. You just put in the code, it would come up on the phone voice service. You put in their account number, you send it. All of a sudden, they received the money. They would get a text saying that you just received this money, and you're buying at the market, right? So again, where I'm going on this was, it was a technology or a driver that drove change, that changed the way that not just simple things were done, literally how everyone interacted with everyone in that space, right? And I think you're going to find the same thing, as Dara pointed out, that when, I think he's right on the banking, when we get that digital banking sorted out, whether it's legislation or whatever it might be within our region throughout the Caribbean, I think you can see a very drastic change in the way that just everyday life changes for people throughout the region, right?
You raised a good point, Blair, about leapfrogging. Regions can leapfrog technology if they don't have a lot of digital debt. And I think this is an advantage for Jamaica and the Caribbean region in general. I've worked in North America for many years, and there's a lot of organizations that have so much digital debt that they can't transform fast because they have a lot of legacy debt in their organization that needs to be rationalized, upgraded, sunsetted, modernized, and that takes time and political will and capital.
Right.
But the story Blair just told is one of leapfrogging, right? They went from a party line, POTS phones, to everyone being mobile enabled in one leap.
Yeah,
Right.
in a very short period of time as well. Like, we're not talking 10, 15, 20 years. We were like 2-3 years. It went from nothing to everyone, literally overnight, right?
So, Tweety, one of the things as well, it's leapfrogging as well. So if you think about it, but ours is advancement, and we're talking about, is big tech in the Caribbean? Is it available to us? And Joe is right. It has been slow to come, but it's coming. But we have, like, say for example, I run a tier 3 data center in Jamaica, and like a lot of times we'll talk to customers, and the very first step, even before you think of digital transformation, the very first step you want to talk is to talk to people about taking, as their business has grown, take the server that's sitting under your desk in your office, or take the server that's sitting under your desk that's sitting next to a gas station or wherever your office is, and where your data is exposed, and bring it somewhere that's safe and do a co-location. So take your data and let somebody look after it, and that's literally one of the first steps to think about, to say, okay, look, now, if I lose this information in my business, I'm gone. 76% of SME businesses that lose data or lose servers or lose data, they cannot survive after 12 months. So what's going to happen is people can make that migration, and then once you've got that migration, we're actually, the data centers are finite, because it's it's just storage, and you put servers in there. But like with the arrival of the salt stack on island, you've literally got it's virtually unlimited. So what we can do is we can bring customers, they've made that migration away from their office and protected their data, and then the capabilities for them to plug into the Azure stack and to have limitless opportunities to consume the various services that they need. And that's literally once when the doors, that's when I suppose the light bulb moment people should have is, let somebody else look after this complex stuff. Like if you're in the business of, if you're a marketing company and you want to do some marketing, why would a marketing company have an IT division? Let somebody do that for you. And again, I would often say in a non-technical way that's what digital transformation is. That's what the cloud is going to bring for you. You don't have to do it yourself. You can be a small SME company operating the Caribbean, breaking down the barriers of the barriers of the geographical barriers, and operating like a multinational, but from here.
All right.
Sorry, I'm just gonna make a comment,
Blair,
a quick
yes, go
comment
ahead.
on that, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
So, as we have Dara from Digicel on here, I'll poke at the ISPs as a good example, right? So, as we sit in our islands and I think of the cable TV when I first moved Cayman 16 years ago. I was in Bermuda for 7 prior to that. But when I moved Cayman, there was one of those kind of ripple effects happening again. So
Right.
local providers were providing television over internet, over regular service, right? Charging whatever they wanted, and all of a sudden, dish networks. Everyone could get dish networks. They could put them up, and what ended up happening? The local market had to adapt to be able to compete globally. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, companies now, there is no such thing as I operate. Maybe there's for certain verticals, but most companies nowadays are operating at a global level, right? They have to be able to compete on the markets. You can't just say, well, I'm in Cayman, I can charge whatever I want. But those days are over. So, we look at now like ISPs, I know they're going to have a very hard 5-10 years as they learn, they modernize their services to compete with things like Starlink. Because if they don't, people are just going to buy their Starlink box, stick it at their house. But that's the reality, right? You're now competing at cost levels, at service levels, with things that can be delivered to your front door because technology continues to evolve and change, right? And again, it's one of those things that I see coming down the road with Elon and like I said, Starlink. But that is the reality of it in this day and age, right? If you are not thinking about how you're going to compete at a global level and embrace technology, I think you're gonna have a hard few years ahead of you, right?
Very, very, very well said, Blair. Very well said. And that's very good for people in the Caribbean and the businesses that think I can continue to do what I'm doing now. Later on, everybody is trying to transform digitally to move their business. You're going to be left behind. So I'm glad that you said that. And a lot of Caribbean businesses actually think that way. And if you don't adapt, you're going to be left behind.
So like every business, it's move or die. I like we've got Starlink have come to Jamaica, and a lot of my customers are asking me what I think of it. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. I think that competition just makes things better for everybody. It makes things. We have to be keener. We have to invest more. We're just about to invest $200 million into the network in Jamaica. $200 million of investment in fiber. So because we have to up our game, because they're coming with their technology, and we have to up our game, and that's what you need. Competition breeds excellence. Jamaicans know this. Competition breeds excellence. So I embrace it. And the beauty for me, and it's move or die. That's why I'm such good friends with these genius guys on the call, is because I have to bring value add to my customers, and my value add is by partnering with people like Doug and people like Blair and people like Mike to bring a value add to businesses. Let's face it, the connectivity is just plumbing, but there's an awful lot more after that. That's just the starting point.
Awesome. Great discussion. All right. What are some of the trends that we should look out for digital transformation? I mean, someone mentioned that the Caribbean is not too far behind, but still a little way to go. But what are some of the trends should businesses look out for?
Doug, do you want to start this one? Because I know security is a big one.
Yeah.
I was going to point to Doug.
So trends, right? So number one is we're progressing. I think from a cybersecurity standpoint, redundancy is key. From a complexity in terms of your front door, don't use password 123. Number one. Number two, multi-factor authentication is vital, right? And we have to start looking at zero trust environments as well, right? With the onset of COVID, we saw VPN was the enemy in many cases of these breaches that we've been involved with helping remediate. So some of the trends are, as we're building this, I use analogies a lot, right? So back in the day, thousands of years ago, when us as humans are building mud huts, right? There wasn't a plan. It was just, hey, we got to get out of the cold. Well, now with engineering, we have blueprints, we have a process, and as we're building specific structures like back home. So I'm in Trinidad right now for a conference, but I'm from New York. We have OSHA, right? So when you're building something along with a preset of rules. Same with the digital transformation. When you're transforming your environment, you have to do so in a manner that you now are taking everything and you are now making it digital. You're making it easier to access. You're allowing your company to be fluid, but remember, everybody else can easily gain access to that as well. And a lot of those pitfalls I explained earlier allude to that. So as we're progressing, we need to make sure that we have fail safes in place. We need to make sure we have a process to not only for business continuity, but an InfoSec policy in place and actually abide by that. And on top of that, even have elements of management to make sure when bad stuff does happen, because it will, that it can be identified, validated, and remediated pretty quickly. But yeah, as we progress through those, you got the trends, the good trends that we're seeing, even with organizations in Jamaica that we're currently working with, that we're deploying comprehensive cybersecurity services with, working end to end to help them evolve. It's building a good foundation all the way up to the roof and everything in between to protect themselves in that process.
Sounds great. What does big data and AI, what role does that have to play in digital transformation? Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. In terms of it's actually building on your question, and I think one of the viewers asked the question is, what role can employees play in innovating within digital transformation? I think big data, arming your employees with that data and dashboards, surfacing insights so that they can serve customers better. That's a big trend. You're seeing more and more dashboards being built, identifying where your data is. So, one simple example that I use is, one of the companies I own is an online ticketing company for, islands in the Caribbean. So Bermuda, a little bit in Jamaica and a little bit in Trinidad.
Right.
And so we did a simple thing where we have this database of all ticket orders for the last 12 years. And you have your phone number in there. And so when you call in to ask a question about an event, we go, hi, this is PTIX. What is your name? What we do now is we actually pull from that database and we pull up the last order tied to that phone number. And so we know your name. We have a pretty good idea what you're going to be calling about. And so big data allows you to do that. You're mining the data that you already have.
Right.
It's not like you're pulling this data together. You probably already have it.
Right.
And then you're using AI to spot trends. Look, this person is struggling to buy a ticket every time. Let's proactively help them. I know in the telco business, we'll use AI to see how many times you call in to the call center, email in with a complaint, do sentiment analysis, and predict whether or not you're going to churn to a competitor, and then allow you to proactively go to that customer and say, look, I understand you're having a hard time. You seem to be watching a lot of movies. Let's upgrade you to a bigger data package. And again, you're using big data and AI to help you manage your customers and basically be predictive.
Sorry, Dara, are you capturing all that data and have all that info on us? What is going on? Get out of here. I never knew that Digicel did that.
I didn't say Digicel.
I'm just joking. I'm just stirring the pot. Michael touched on one of the questions from someone about how can they empower their staff? And actually, I just wanted to add to Michael, because he's right on that, on provide them data, But the other side of that is, at the end of the day, it is about knowledge, right? Knowledge and education, right? And I know part of the theme for BizTech this next week is around kind of education and where we go. And I cannot say it enough. We need to go from, the days of people keeping lights on systems. Take the time, empower your staff, empower your team, get them trained, and get them evolving and moving so that they actually feel part of the business instead of the mailroom. Remember they did the mailroom guys? Well, the IT guys aren't the mailroom guys anymore. Empower them to be sitting at the table with you, talking about, okay, how can we empower the other verticals in the company? So, HR department, the accountants, whatever it might be, with the data that, like Michael mentioned, that, and so that they've got the skill set to be able to add true value to the company, instead of being viewed as the people that are in the back of the data center, because really they are the heart of the system, right? But I can't say it enough about empowering your staff through knowledge and education. It is the quickest and best way you can get a good result out of a team and move down that path of digital transformation, right?
Another tie-in to that, Blair, is a question. I saw a question pop up, and I can't remember the name of the gentleman. It was about the question about getting our employees involved, and getting them enabled in the digital. So, what was that specific question?
Hold on. I'm going to take questions right now. I'm actually looking at them. So I'm seeing, how do we enable employees?
Yeah.
Innovators in the transformation process?
Exactly, from Larkland. Yeah. So that's a brilliant question. We're actually we're right in the middle of doing that at the minute. So so we're Digicel, so we're involved in that business, but we've done a digital transformation. We're already a digital company, but we're looking at other things as well. And we know when we did our last transformation, you just definitely need to get the buy-in from the team. So we've actually got a portal, a platform that's and we're encouraging people it's a nice simple platform, but what ideas have people got to improve things? And we put it into 3 simple buckets. Is this something that's easy to do? Is it something that's relatively okay to do, or is it something that's really hard to do? And what ideas have employees got that they believe would make our organization more efficient? We're just getting some fantastic ideas. So again, it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a market. It doesn't matter if you're a sales guy on the road or an engineer or a call center person. Whatever it is you're doing, everyone has input, and we're seeing the ideas coming up. And there's just some brilliant ideas. So you were talking about the people in the back room, and Blair. We've so many employees that are at the coalface, talking to customers, using systems. If you talk to your employees and literally just filter their ideas and think, well, okay, how can we just take their ideas and then harness their ideas? They don't have to do the business case. They don't have to do anything but pull the ideas from them, put in rewards and awards for ideas. The information is there. We don't necessarily need huge expertise and consultancy to come in and tell you what to do. Your staff can help you.
There's a huge amount of brain trust in organizations. We hold blue sky thinking workshops across our team on a regular basis, where people just come in and bounce ideas. There's no such thing as a bad idea. Let's get it out and let's discuss it, and that spawns other ideas and builds confidence. And another thing with digital transformation is it moves people closer to their customers as well. The transformation process. So you get people out of the data centers, patching hardware and operating systems and moving them up the value chain, becoming architects and BAs, business analysts and application owners, so they can add more value to the business and to their customers.
All right. So I'm going to take some more questions from the audience. I know we have a lot to talk about. 1 hour is not enough time. So I guess I saw persons looking forward to BizTech to kind of get more information from the SALT team on some topics that we discussed. But I'm going to go to Tracy, right? So Tracy Pilkey-Patino, can you explain the difference between digital transformation and digitization, and how best to approach these differences when explaining this to clever individuals? But I can take that one.
I think it was C-level individuals, right?
I'm sorry. I'm like, what is that? C-level. Okay, C-level. C-level.
I'll reserve some time for Joe on this one, because I think he may be able to really get this one. But in terms of just quickly digitization, that's obviously taking physical world, paper, and those sorts of things, and getting that away. So I think we all have gone to a bank, filled out forms in triplicate, and then somebody goes and enters that into a system. So the digitization is is getting rid of that paper and getting it in straight in, so you fill it out online. And then for me, the digital transformation starts from there in terms of the workflow that comes out of the back end of that data into that organization, and how that data is touched, moved along, and used to serve the customer. And so I think if you explain it to a C-level who's a non-techie, in terms of that workflow, and look at, whenever I'm speaking to a CFO, I will say that's kind of my second job is I'm talking about return on investment. You're going to spend X on this project, and here's what we're going to give you back in savings or more customers. So I tend to translate it into financial terms.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, real quick, from digitization standpoint is more or less analog to digital, right? And digitalization is more, I mean, from a very, very high level, it's the actual process that goes along with it, right? Taking the process, making the process digital as well. That coincides with what we've been speaking on around digital transformation, right? Just the actual process. Okay, we're making this simpler for ourselves. What do we do with it now, right? So on a very high level, that's what it is.
All right, guys, we have 3 minutes. I'm going to ask each person just to add a closing. And there's so much to discuss. Really, persons are looking forward to BizTech to speak with the SALT team and the team here and the panel to discuss more about digital transformation. As I said, that is the topic on every business owner's mind today, locally, regionally, everywhere. So I just want everybody to just close, to just add a closing statement. And we have 3 minutes.
We'll let Dargo last because he talks the most. Sorry, that's me just doing it.
Attack is the best form of defense, Blair.
Sorry, I'll let the boys go. I'll go last if you don't mind. I'll close it out. Let's everyone else go ahead.
I'll start. Just my thoughts are, start with vision definition, something we call ideation. Make sure you get good buy-in across all of the stakeholders. Involve as many people in your organization as you can. Communicate your vision widely. Get that consensus early. But start there. Start at the business justification. Define your outcomes that you want. Define how you're going to measure success. Start at that 60,000 foot level, and then work your way down into the details.
All right, thanks, Mike.
First of all, I don't think I was invited to BizTech. I'd love to be in Jamaica next week, but we'll work on that for the next one.
You can join virtually. Mike. I'll send you the link.
Okay, there you go. But
you can share the hotel room with Joe and I if you need to as well. I'm sure we can get a room over at the AC.
Yeah, I'll pass.
You'll have to drink your rum virtually though.
Yeah. But I think just stealing a phrase from Joe there, if you look at this at 60,000 feet, where are we? 2000 to 2010 was the era of connectivity. 2010 to 2020 was cloud. Everybody was moving to the cloud. We're in the digital transformation era, and I think you can look at who had success and who had failures in those two previous eras of technology, and you can take lessons from that. And so be forewarned, you need to be in a digital transformation journey right now. And because you don't want to miss out on this era because your competitors likely won't.
Great. Doug?
Yeah, I think Michael made a point earlier on scalability, right? It's spot on, right? As organizations scale, as we grow and as we progress, risk acceptance, right? Where are our crown jewels? What can we not live without, right? You might not have value of your data until somebody else puts a value on it for you, right? So you want to, as you're progressing, as we're going, less is more. Let's consolidate, simplify, visualize what our risks are, and moving forward, make sure that we have an actionable plan to remediate when the bad stuff does happen.
Right.
What
Right,
I would,
Barry?
again, I said at the start, I'm not a techie, but like I know I could implement a successful digital transformation for any organization, and the reason is because I ask questions and I knock on the doors of gentlemen like these and to ask for opinions, get help. It's not that complicated, but you know, like from where Doug is coming from, you know, if you do it wrong, you're exposing your crown jewels. So it is important to get it done properly. But the great thing is that there is so much resource available to you. Ask questions. Again, my final piece, we've got a base of account managers and service managers and you know, ICT consultants. They're happy to talk to people and to, you know, while we're an ICT company, the expertise we have is we partner with people. So we're going to partner with Joe and we partner with Doug, and then in other areas we partner with other people. So you can have one conversation and that can open the door to 20 experts, and those experts aren't going to come in and charge you a consulting fee. They'll let you know what can be done, and
Right.
if you trust them and if you like the path that they're showing you, they'll take you on that path and save money for your business. So for me, as Blair said, my long-winded way of doing things is I'll talk to people and I'll ask questions and I'll seek expertise.
Right. And Blair,
Except from Blair, not from you, from Joe.
Yeah. So what I'll say is, you know, everyone touched on all the really valid points. Remember, digital transformation is a journey. It is not something that just happens overnight. I think the theme of what everyone was, the rest of the team were saying is, you know, you have to have a plan. It has to be well thought out. Lean on your trusted advisors. But if it's the same guy showing up at your door with a cybersecurity hat, it's the same guy that's going to do your migrations, I tell you what, you should probably find another advisor. There's none of us. There's such a broad depth of technology these days that if anyone's showing up saying with the same hat on, it's the same guy coming to do all of your services, you probably need to speak to someone.
Yeah.
There is too much technology for even like some of those, like I'm an engineer, I build systems, and I might brag and say I'm quite good, but I'll even say that there's things that there are areas that are just way past, like I wouldn't go into data and AI, right? There's just too much information out there, and it grows every single day. So if you can take anything from this conversation today is have a well thought out plan, make sure your trusted advisor is working for you and ensures he brings the right people to the table to ensure that you're getting the best outcome of that process, right? And it's not something that happens overnight. And the last thing I'll say is we will see you all next week in Jamaica. We're really looking forward to being at BizTech, and yeah, it's going to be a good week. So looking forward to seeing everyone there.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. I wish we had more time. So if you want to hear more from the panel here and from the team at Salt, join us at BizTech Conference on November 17th at the Jamaica Conference Center and also online. Visit www.biztechconf.com to register and purchase your tickets. So you could join in person or you could join virtually. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was a very insightful discussion and I really enjoyed this talk. So looking forward to see you next week, and thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Talk soon.
You too.
Bye-bye.